Hey everybody, Hunter back again for part number 39 of the build tutorial. This one here, I'm going to give another option on the way to do flocking as far as the finished product. You've already seen in the previous video how I went about putting it on. Like I say, there's many different ways you can do it. That's the way that works for me. So that's the one that I passed on to everybody. But you don't have to do it that way. That's not the only way by any means. But what we ended up with, and I'll hold this up here, we ended up getting the texture on the floor. Now, we did use that real light flocking on that, and we used that color, whatever I did. I put it back up on the shelf, the Tester's Model Master Enamel wood color. Now, from a distance, this color and what we did on the wood graining looks pretty much the same. But as you get closer to it, and I'm not sure if the camera will pick up on it, you'll see a color change in there. And we're trying to get it to focus in on just the flocking. There we go. And what's happening is here in the light, it's taking on a pink tone. So we don't want that. Real easy thing to do, and this will happen even if, say, for instance, you don't have any red flocking and you only have tan or some color like we put on here. That's perfectly fine. Go ahead and use whatever method you want to hold it down. Put your flocking on, let that dry, let everything dry up, and then we're going to go. I'm going to show you a technique on how to change the color of that flocking and keep that texture, and everything will look real good. So to start out with, what we want to do on this particular model is we have to go back in and do just a little bit of taping just to make sure we don't get overspray on anything. So, of course, I'm going to go back in with my 3M tape again, the wider stuff, the 3/4 stuff. And we're just going to very loosely tape this up just so we don't get paint on our finished paint work out here is the main thing we're worried about. But this is a real easy technique to do, and this is something I did a flocking job one time on a model, and I thought it would look real good. And as I started adding more components and stuff in the interior and mocking things up, I looked at it and I said, you know what? I don't like that color. And I said, well, I wonder if I can go back and make a change. And so I tried it and I went back in and made a change, and it actually worked. So that's the procedure that I'm going to show here. So again, I mean, if you have experience with the airbrush, a lot of experience and spraying and know how your paints are going to act, you really wouldn't have to tape this up. You could freehand this, but I'm going to go ahead and tape it up anyway, just to be on the safe side. And we're not doing anything special as far as the taping. We're just kind of laying the tape in there roughly, getting it into place, just covering up whatever we possibly could get some paint on that we don't want paint on. And I'm going to lay one more piece across the top of the fender here so that when we go to spray by that point, we don't get it onto the actual fender surface. There we go. We got that looking pretty good now. We got it taped up, and that's kind of like sort of like a bathtub of tape there. You can see it all around the edges. And just make sure you don't spray anything back here on your wood grain if you're, doing that technique or working on this particular model. So what I have done is I put some of the wooden deck tan back into the airbrush, and I thinned it down about another 25%. So before, if you remember, I said I had it about 50-50 in the jar. Well, I put a little bit of that paint out of the jar. It's already been thinned into the airbrush, and then I dump about, maybe whatever I put in the airbrush, I dump about a quarter more of thinner. So we're at about 75-25 roughly overall. And I've got the paint flow turned way down on the airbrush. And all you want to do is you're going to come in on the carpet itself, and we're just going to very lightly go over everything that we put the flocking on. And you don't want to get a real heavy coat. That's one thing you don't want to do on this because it will ruin your flocking. You want to make sure that you're spraying this very dry and you want to get a nice even coat on everything. But make sure that you don't get any shiny spots in your paint, because if you do, you're putting it on too heavy and it will ruin the way the fibers on the flocking are laying down. So that's one thing I definitely want to touch on to make sure people don't make that mistake putting too much paint on. And this color that we have in there is the exact same color that we have on the rest of the interior. But when you're done doing this technique, you will notice that the carpet will come out a little bit different color. And that's what I say. If you don't have any red flocking and all you got is a lighter color, you can come in with a red paint at this stage right here and do this same technique. And now you didn't have to wait around to order in red flocking. You've made it. You've created red flocking out of tan or white flocking. And I know this is not a real good view to see exactly what I'm doing with the airbrush, but I've got to watch what I'm doing because I don't want to screw up anything we've already done in here. So bear with me on that. And I'm just going back across the top of the console here again, just blending all that in. And same thing back here in the back on this raised panel. I'm blending that in. All I'm doing is just blending everything in right now. And like I say, try to keep your passes even across your carpet. The more passes that you put down, the darker it will become. Okay, there we go. We've got that all toned down now, looking pretty decent. We're going to go ahead and pull the tape off of here, and we'll show you what all this came out like up close. I like it a whole lot better than what I had before. I just was not into that pink tone that I ended up with. But I think we're going to be good now. I like what we got. And like I say, that gives you an option. If you don't have the flocking color that you need, you can always go back in with an airbrush. And once you have a flocking down there, whatever color it may be, you can change it to whatever color you want. Okay, let me see. Let me get my towel here and I'll hold it up underneath of it so y'all can see what's going on with this. Okay, here we go. And we'll hold that up there and you can see that we have changed the flocking color and made it all nice and even, got everything looking pretty good. Now there's a little bit of a missed spot right here where I didn't get a whole lot of fibers in. That's no big deal because when we set the seat in and you get the interior panel up against that, you're not going to see it. So some of those little things like that, don't stress over them. You know, even though that may be what you consider a flaw in the model, is anybody going to see that? It's not going to happen unless they're all over the model, or this is a convertible, or something that you can really see all the way down into it. That kind of stuff like that. Don't stress over it. Don't worry about it. Move on and continue with the model, and you'll be good to go. So hopefully that gives you an idea on how you can change your flocking color by spraying a little bit of thinned out paint back over top of it. And if you look very carefully, you can tell that we are definitely a different color on the flocking than we are on this. But the funny thing is that is the exact same color that we sprayed on the console. That's just a texture difference, and you can see how it shows up different on camera there. So that's just a quick little trick for everybody. If you have any questions on that, let me know. I'll be more than glad to help you out. Stay tuned for the next part coming up. We're going to start installing some body panels. So stay tuned for that one. Like always, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.